Oh, hello there, and welcome back to part 2 of my bullet hell twin stick shooters development. Last week, we went over the basic prototype, which included enemies, combat, and movement. This week, we'll start going over procedural room generation, wave spawning, and not to spoiler too much, we hit a pretty nasty roadblock midway through. So, let's jump right in. Next on the Trello list is to create some procedural rooms. I planned the map to consist of rectangular rooms that the player moves through one by one, with each room spawning a new wave of enemies to defeat, and the doors unlocking once the room has been cleared. Considering the larger structure, the game takes notes from old retro games, for better or worse. The most important functions of the procedural room are: A. Create doors at certain positions depending on the orientation to its adjacent rooms. B. Spawn a predetermined set of enemies over time, and C. Open the doors once all the enemies have been defeated by the player. Now that I've got a business plan that would leave Jeff Bezos wondering how even he could further increase game holder value, we'll start with A, the creation and placement of doors. Since the map is grid-based and all the rooms are rectangular, we can go ahead and assume that our room has a total number of 4 possible door positions, with each side having a door centered on it. After placing some door frames down in each position, my mind immediately intuited a subtractive algorithm, simply meaning that all 4 doors will exist at spawn. When a room is generated, the map will delete any unnecessary doors, which will be promptly kidnapped by demons and dragged straight to hell. You could probably do that a whole number of ways, either simpler or better optimized, but it's the procedure that first popped into my head. Thanks, demons.
Yeah, no problem.
Next up is the wave spawning. The algorithm I'll be discussing is actually the second version. The first one worked fine. Unfortunately, I would have loved to make a joke about it. It just took a few times to figure out enemy composition. The old algorithm had a set number of enemies that would spawn for each class, so if you went ahead and killed all of enemy A, it would just exclusively spawn enemy B until it reached the limit for all the enemies combined. And it could get pretty ridiculous. So yeah, that needed to be changed. The new algorithm is given a ratio of every class, say 10 enemy A's for 3 enemy B's, and it would keep that ratio until the spawn limit was reached. This was fun and balanced. The only downside is that every enemy class is more or less present from the start, eliminating any pacing or intensity/difficulty curve within a wave. But with the difficulty curve designed into the room progression, I think that's a fine stopping point. Next up, we're going to jump over to the art side of things and design some enemies. At the moment, we only have 2 enemy types, chasers and shooters. Yes, those are technical terms. So I'm just going to do some quick sketches to get the basic design. The setting or plot of the game is that the AI for a moon colony has gone rogue, having all the machinery under control to attack the humans they're supposed to serve.
Nuts! Thank you to the Academy. Wow!
With that in mind, I want all the enemies to have a base in robotics, but to help create a sense of life, I want to work in influences of biological creatures. So, to start, the chasers all make insectoid. They do swarm you, after all. I was quite scared of spiders as a child, so I'm going to work in some arachnoid influences as well. For the shooters, I just know I wanted to have cannons, so I'm going to go for a squid-like look with a mantle and tentacles. But to be honest, I feel like I just made an armed version of the onions from Pikmin, but you know, whatever. I'm not the best modeler, so I'm just going to accept these as a first pass for now, just so I get something to work with in the game, and go back for another art pass later where I polish everything up. But very cool, we have our very own enemies all ready to go. So after playing with these enemies for a bit and confirming that they work well together, I already feel some gaps where I could design some new ones. Particularly, there just aren't enough barriers that the player has to maneuver around. What I mean is that with just these 2 enemy types, the player can more or less move about the whole area uninhibited without needing to dash. I want an enemy whose attacks must be dashed through to be avoided. The first idea that comes to mind, and is a mechanic that already exists in the game, is an enemy and laser. It pierces through everything, bisecting the play space. If the player wants to switch sides of the laser, they either have to dash through the laser itself or destroy the enemy. The second enemy I came up with is the one that creates an expanding ring. The player will have to dash through the ring eventually, and I personally find it especially fun when there's multiple rings I have to quickly dodge between. The implementation of the ring is something I'm actually quite happy with, and I'll explain. The initial thought would be to model a torus-like shape and simply scale it up over time. You'll notice when you do this that the radius expands, yes, but so does the width of the ring itself. An interesting mechanic. I may pin this idea down for a boss later, but it's important to me that the ring stays the same width. I don't want to over-complexify. Complexify? I think I meant complicate. Complexify a pretty simple idea. So these rings, in order to retain the width, are actually a bunch of individual cubes. I was able to find an algorithm in the Unreal documentation, actually, for creating a ring of cubes placed and rotated around a center. Quite a lucky break, right? So making some adjustments that allows a new cube to be added every time a gap would begin forming in the ring, we have a pretty convincing expanding ring effect. For optimization's sake, I added an instant static mesh for the cubes, so the engine only has to make one draw call for what becomes hundreds of individual meshes. Really happy with how this came out. So just a few housekeeping adjustments left to make. In the enemy class structs, these are the names of the enemies that should be spawned, but because I can put any enemy type in there, I might as well just name these to enemy 1, enemy 2, so it doesn't cause any confusion. Oh? Huh, okay, well, that's okay, that happens. Let me just reopen everything and see how much I lost in. Oh. Let's try something. Oh my god. I can't open anything. Everything crashes the project. Is there anything I can even do at this point?
The next day.
I can do this. I will save this project. I don't care how much Googling, how many weird hacks it takes. I will save this. So it seems what caused the crash is changing a struct's name while it still has a split pin node somewhere in a blueprint. The result is that every blueprint that uses this struct becomes dereferenced. And since I'm a dumbass that doesn't have a backup, that means there's only one thing left I can do. Start a new project from scratch and copy-paste all the code. It means resetting every variable, creating new references for every actor, but I'm unemployed, so I have the time.
a.m.
I'm back. I'm finally where I was, and it only took the entire day. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, consider liking and subscribing, or follow me on Twitter if that suits your fancy a bit more. I'll catch you next time. Stay magical.